This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. All right, ready to drink cocktails. High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal, among others. It is all, and of course, the pickle bar led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. By the way, viewership, national semifinals, Penn State, Notre Dame, 17.8 million viewers, second most watched Orange Bowl since 2006. Top Thursday audience for non-NFL sporting events since the 2019 NBA Finals, peaked at 20 million viewers. Cotton Bowl, Ohio State, Texas, 20.6 million. Most watched Cotton Bowl on record. Best Friday telecast among all networks, all genres, sports properties in more than 4 years, peaked at 22.7 million. Record viewership for the two semifinals, both games delivered in terms of the quality of game. Neal Coolong delivers quality of guest week after week after week after week, 52 weeks a year, 11 years. You do the multiplication. I'm too lazy to do it. Neal, welcome to the show, my friend.
As always, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm glad to say we're on to another off season.
I was telling somebody earlier today, I said, for a certain segment of the fan base, and not everybody, a certain segment, I wonder sometimes if the offseason's more exciting than the games. Right? And I said, I mentioned that Neal Coolong loves the movement of the offseason. I mean, you really love this time of the year, don't you?
It's a couple different things. For me, it was always the chase of the news. You know, I loved breaking news. I loved the information coming out. What each move meant, what was going to happen because of that, the speed of it, the activity. You know, it's you get a point sometimes too where you're bored in the off season. There's no next game to talk about or look forward to. In the off season, you've got so many things that can come from it. It just kind of lets the imagination run wild. You know, and I always enjoyed that, and that's what compelled me to do the things that I do with my work. It's the soap opera, you know. It's the drama. Right. I'll be the first person to admit it. I mean, I get how into it people can become, and while it's probably nothing in comparison to European soccer, but Americans will get behind this time of the year more than they will during the season. A large part of that is because there's no defined goal right now. You know, there's just the building to the ultimate goal, which obviously is not going to happen for the Steelers and several other teams in the NFL this season. But what's going to be next? What can we do now? What will this team do to get themselves in a better position next season? What else can they do? You can be the GM, you can be the coach, you can be whatever, and kind of dive in and analyze all the different moves that are available for a team to make. And I think the drama that comes with that, the intrigue, the speculation, the conversation that comes with that is really what drives fandom. That's really what it is. It's not just cheering on the game itself. I think it probably used to be that, but the proliferation of instant news gave fans much more connection to the teams than they ever had before. And this is a phenomenon that really has only existed for probably the last 20 or so years.
Right. Exactly.
The information was there, but we didn't live it and breathe it the way that we do now. And it always seems like it's not enough. There's always more that can happen. People are still breaking down Saturday's game, and we'll probably still be talking about that come July. It's going to be a thing for however long, and people want that conversation. They want to know what more could be taken out of whatever it is, to a silly degree in some cases, but it's all part of the same. It's all part of the same kind of drive for entertainment, for stimulation within this form of entertainment. And it's always had me. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy doing. And, this is kind of the kickoff of it. Usually get kind of a week to unwind a little bit from, the day-to-day of the regular season. Then you're diving into it. The Hula Bowl is already going on. College evaluation analysis, that piece of it is just starting up. It'll hit a fever point at the end of the month with the Senior Bowl, followed by the Combine after that. We'll be in full swing, and we won't, we'll barely even think about last season. It's all about the next season.
Well, let's get to this part. There are very few playoff teams that are the mess that the Steelers are. In terms of what do you do with the head coach? What do you do with the quarterbacks? What do you do with the wide receivers? What do you do? Do you give the running back another year? I mean, the list of what they need to think about is really long for a team that made the playoffs.
I would agree with that. It's amazing how quickly that gets revealed. It didn't seem this way 6 weeks ago.
Right.
Looked like they had things going in a pretty good direction. But what has been kind of the problem with this team the last several years is everything kind of seems to be built on a house of cards. It's not as strong as it seemed. Building to the point that they were at. In this case, they're 10-3. They took a tough loss against Cleveland to get to that point. A game, I think, if as they saw in the rematch, the Steelers probably win that 7 out of 10 times. Caught them on a bad night, short week, road game. They're able to rebound and offensively blow up against Cincinnati. Not the best defensive game, but also a very good offensive opponent. You think that they're in pretty good shape. The bottom completely fell out during that game, and you see remnants of it the rest of the way. And it's not necessarily the quality of the opponent, although that's certainly an issue. It just seems overall, in my mind, the Steelers have their philosophy, their strategy, year in and year out, is not enough to last 17 games plus a playoff. And I'm not necessarily just saying, one more regular season game is what's causing it. It's more the fact that what they're doing gets figured out. They don't kind of counterpunch from that. And all of the things that we thought worked aren't, and they're not doing anything else. But we still see them doing the same types of stuff. In fact, the only difference that I would say we saw in the last game of this season versus the 4 that came before it is they didn't have any halfback tosses. That was the one time they didn't, and I might argue part of that is because they barely ran any plays. They didn't have a chance. It would have been brought into it at some point. I don't mean that literally as much as just strategically they get dominated on both sides of the ball toward the end of the season by a couple opponents. And it seems like those opponents are picking up on those things. The Steelers, though, don't recognize how they've been figured out. And at that point, it seems like they feel we're going to dance with the date that we brought, and nothing's going to change. Whereas you watch the Ravens, the Ravens did a lot of what they would typically do, but you didn't see Lamar run the ball as much. And a large part of that was because, in my opinion anyway, Todd Monken wanted to see how committed the Steelers were to crashing T.J. Watt onto Derrick Henry the entire game. Right. So all they would do is just let him go, and then Lamar has A or B gap off to that side to run and go do what he wanted to do. That was by far the most that Jackson has run all year. In other words, they paid attention to what the Steelers were doing and adjusted what they were doing. I wouldn't say that they had success in stopping Lamar or Henry, as a lot of teams don't, and I get the feeling you're gonna see Buffalo find out this weekend. But it's more of the fact that the Steelers wouldn't have anything on offense to change anyway in a similar fashion. There's nothing else that they could do strategically to get teams off balance, to attack them in a way that they haven't. There's a lot of the same stuff, and that to me is really what causes the collapse in the playoffs in particular, but mostly down the stretch of the last several years now.
Yeah. I have never once questioned whether Mike Tomlin should be the head coach of the Steelers, and still don't. What's the argument pro and con at this point about Mike Tomlin?
Pro is he's experienced. His players play for him. I might have said that a bit easier 6 weeks ago. Hey, let me just interject on that and point this out. Purely speculation in my mind. I'm not reporting anything. The team, it feels like something happened. You know, What I mean by that is go back and remember all those Week 17 games that the Steelers would play the Browns and just run a train through them, and the Browns didn't look like they cared at all. And they'd fire the head coach after the game, and it would turn out that the team knew that the head coach was getting fired before the game, and that probably caused a complete lackadaisical effort. Watching the game Saturday night, my honest thought was they found out that Tomlin's retiring or something like that. They were not invested in that game at all. And I don't know if I've ever seen a Steelers team perform that lackadaisically for 4 quarters. It was embarrassing in a lot of ways, to the point where it feels like something internal happened. I don't know what. Obviously, Tomlin's not retiring. Doesn't seem that they are planning to fire him. He'll still be there. That's not the cause, but I feel like something else happened. On the pro side of Mike Tomlin, though, that kind of thing usually doesn't happen. He's getting great effort from everybody throughout the course of the season. Some teams are better, some teams are worse. He tends to overcoach the talent that he has. I don't know how talented this team is, because at the same time, it doesn't seem like he is able to get the sum of the whole to be greater than the sum of the parts. He coached every snap of T.J. Watt's probable first ballot Hall of Fame career. He never got a defense that truly dominated throughout the course of the season, despite having Watt, despite having Cam Hayward, who I also feel is a Hall of Fame level player. He had the individual talent. They never seemed to come together as a unit. So on the downside, it doesn't seem like the team raises the bar as much as the individual players can raise the bar. It doesn't seem he's capable of beating better teams consistently when it counts. His biggest adversary is the Ravens. Obviously, the Ravens have had far more success than the Steelers have over the last 5 years. The Steelers have beaten the Ravens somehow, but they haven't gone on anywhere in the playoffs. That's a problem. I feel like the message gets stale after a while. More than anything, it might not even have to do with Tomlin. I think that it's just sometimes a change is needed. I feel like that's where they are now. If they feel Tomlin is still the right person to lead the team, then okay. But that doesn't change the fact that there is change that's necessary here. And I don't mean personnel decisions. I just mean philosophically, they're going to have to go about their business in a much different fashion than they have, because this is continuing to happen. There's no way you can call this anything but a trend at this point. This isn't just internal, fans talking about it, the national attention being basically, Mike Tomlin's a good coach. Now it's no coach in history has not had a losing record yet not won a playoff game for 6 straight seasons. That, to me, is the most unique Mike Tomlin stat of all time. It's like that's just perfect. That personifies who he is in the second half of his coaching career. And you have to wonder, at what point is that going to change? And it's hard to argue he's the right guy to take you to a Super Bowl when he can't get out of first gear anymore. That's the downside in my opinion. I don't see where it's going with him anymore. I think his teams have not adapted or evolved the way other teams have, and he has not figured out ways to become unique enough to beat the opponent far more often than not in the highest leverage situation. He doesn't seem to bring the overall product above that mark anymore.
Let me ask,
that's not to say he's a bad coach. It's just that it might just be time for something else.
Let me ask the devil's advocate question. We'll have a little fun with this, if that's okay with you. Whenever I hear people say, all right, maybe the message is getting stale, I understand that. But the players turn over all the time. Yeah, Cam Hayward's been around him for a long time, a couple of other guys. But is the message actually too stale for the fans? Is the message too stale for the media? Because the players are the ones that turn over all the time. The media and the fans don't.
Yeah, I think saying a message is stale is probably a bit trite.
No, but you just see, I'm playing devil's advocate here, so I'm interested in what your thought is.
It's something that probably deserves a deeper dive. And when I say that, I guess more of what I mean is your strategy. I don't know how this would not be seen as a reasonable and fair criticism. What the Steelers are doing does not last successfully over 17 games. Mm-hmm. And we know that because what's really unique about Mike Tomlin, I don't have it in front of me, but it's something like this. Every team that he has and has had recently will have a 3 or 4 game winning streak and a 3 or 4 game losing streak.
Right.
The last 6 times Mike Tomlin's gone to the playoffs, they've been utterly destroyed.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not trying to be over-emotional or over-excited about it. It's right. A fact.
Yep.
You know, no team in history has fallen behind by 21 points or more in 6 straight playoff games. Know. I mean, it's remarkable.
Yep.
To me, it's more like, again, I just feel like by the end of the season, Mike Tomlin has already put everything that his teams are going to do on film. And the championship-level teams are the ones that are able to see that, figure it out, and know what to do with it because they're able to adapt what they do and to something else. Because most often you see the Steelers' playoff opponent not doing the things that they usually do.
Right.
And the Steelers are the ones that look exactly the same. Mm-hmm. To me, that's staleness.
That's true.
The page isn't long enough. You know, they have 65 plays for a 75-play game is really what it comes down to. There's not enough there for them to be able to do anything fresh or unique. And I don't mean, you know, I hate the word creativity when it comes to play calling. At the end of the day, it's about blocking and tackling. But if you're not doing, if you continue to do the things that you're doing, you're going to continue to get the results that you're getting. And your opponent is going to figure that out. They know this down and distance, this is what you're going to do. You don't have playmaker enough on offense to continue doing the same things. You're not good enough at that. I saw Pat Freiermuth catch a ball on 3rd and 2 where all he needed to do was turn around and probably move toward the pylon on the sidelines, and he get a first down, and he got stopped.
Yep.
Like that's a play that's open, and that's something that you probably need to convert. But the cornerback knew exactly what was happening from the start. That's the reason he comes in, and to his credit, I forget who the cornerback was, but he made a great play. I mean, it's a good football play. But he knew exactly what was going to happen. That's what happens when Freiermuth is out on that side and that down distance. Yep. So with it's really easy to prepare for them. You know what they're going to do. And when you're in playoff time, you're hammering on the details because you have the most amount of information that your opponent can put out. And the Steelers don't have any way to counter that, or at the very least, they're resistant to do anything else. They're not holding anything back. There's nothing that they have saved. And most of the time, I don't know how great what they've done before that is anyway. So you go up against good teams, and you get crushed. It shouldn't happen. You know, the scoring differential in the NFL is not 19 points or whatever it is the average loss is the Steelers have in the playoffs. It's nowhere near that. You have 6 games in a row. They've been completely destroyed. I believe they were underdogs in all of those games except one, partially because the other team basically knows what the Steelers are going to do, and they're just going to sit back and wait for them to do it.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you're right. I mean, the Steelers, you feel like, I know we watch them all the time, but you usually feel like you know what's coming. That's an issue, and it's you just can't bring in an offensive coordinator to solve all that. But they have to do a lot. What do you do? What do you do with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields? What would you do?
God, this is everything, isn't it? I mean, to me, it's too funny because you're literally in the same position you were in last year. Do you want Russell Wilson or Justin Fields if you're starting quarterback?
Right.
The fact that you have to ask that question means neither of them answered it during the season when you had them for the entire year. Yet, market's not going to produce another one. And, to go off your Trae Young rule, which, I believe you evoked, by the way. You put this on the Steelers when you brought it up a long time ago.
Yes,
They've been in this purgatory for however long. You have a good player with Ben Roethlisberger. Did you put enough around him? Were you able to build him up enough? And what happens when he's no longer there? Now you're fighting for what used to be your backup level. That has to be your starter. And that's really where they're at. I think Wilson did a lot of good things early on, and then he didn't anymore. You break it down. I think a lot of those games, he's got heart. He's a leader. He's a no-quit kind of guy, and that benefits the team. That Washington game, they should not have beaten Washington. Washington was a better team that day. The Steelers won because they were the more experienced team, and they fought more for it down the stretch. Right. Wilson hit on a couple deep passes that, they're deep passes. Nobody hits those 90% of the time. They're called 50-50 balls for a reason in a lot of cases. When he hits that, the offense can move. When it doesn't, though, you're in trouble. And when you're an offense that only has George Pickens that really can make plays consistently down the field, and even then Pickens is well above average, that's going to regress to the mean eventually. When that happened this season and when they did not have Pickens anymore, Wilson was, he was just there. He was just a guy. He didn't do anything to really propel the team. So do you want him? I don't know, because the problem is he's the one that, over everything else, he was going to start over Justin Fields. Fields played too. It's funny to me that the argument even continues, and it does, but if you're arguing between who you want to start, Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, your team's in trouble. And that's really where they are. I don't know what other quarterback they're going to get. So, do you go with the devil you know or the devil you don't? I think that's really what the Steelers' offseason is going to be about. I don't know. Either one of them, I don't think they're difference-making players. I think they're better than the third-round rookie that you'd probably end up drafting anyway. But I don't know where they are yet again in the offseason with their future quarterback. You hope to get more out of Wilson. That's my perspective. If you want what I think the team is going to do, I think they're going to sign Russell Wilson to at least a 2-year contract.
Yeah,
and I think he's going to be their guy next year.
By the way, the Texans cut Deontay Johnson today. All right. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Neal, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, more in a moment. Brought to you by Brewers Outlet and News Radio 1070 WKOK.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.